The key didn't fit the lock anymore. She twisted it once, twice, then pressed her ear against the door as if it might whisper an explanation. The porch light flickered above her, motion sensor dead. The window to the left was black. No music. No television. No cat meowing at the glass. Only the wind, and the second key failing in her hand. Her smile faded in layers. Heels scraping the welcome mat. A glance over her shoulder. A breath held. That confused half-laugh people make when they realize something is very, very wrong, but they haven't caught up to the why yet. On the other side of that door? Nothing. No shoes by the staircase. No scent of cheap instant coffee in the air. No man waiting with arms folded and questions. Just 1,430 square feet of deliberate absence. A house can feel like a person when it goes cold on you. And this one? It had already grieved her and moved on. Hours earlier, she had twirled in front of the hallway mirror in that silver dress she once called too much for a work thing. She tossed her hair like someone was watching. She turned off her phone like she had nothing to lose. She left behind a text on the kitchen island that said, "Don't wait up. XO." It sat there now, unread, beneath a bottle of house keys she'd never touch again. Because he read it. And while she was out clinking glasses with people who called her fun and free, he was in that same kitchen slicing through the wires that kept them tethered. Joint account? Gone. Utilities? Cancelled. Mailbox? Forwarded. Photographs? Packed. That rug she always tripped over but refused to move? Rolled and burned. Even the air inside had changed, scrubbed of the lavender diffuser mist she overused and the dry sarcasm she left in every room. She walked out like it was just another Friday night. She didn't know she was walking out of a life. The neighbors wouldn't say anything. They heard things. Arguing. Silence. More arguing. Silence again. One of them watched him carry out 6 boxes, a cat carrier, and a framed photo flipped backward. Nobody called her. Nobody warned her. This was the kind of ending that doesn't come with music or closure. Just a letter, taped to the inside of the door, which she couldn't open anymore. "You left this home a long time ago. I just finally caught up." And upstairs, in the empty master bedroom, a single item was left on the nightstand. Her wedding ring, dropped in a teacup of water, frozen solid. That's all she found. But what he found, hours earlier, would explain everything. Because that party? It wasn't just a party. 6 hours earlier, while she was smiling into someone else's drink, I was in the garage, holding her secret in my hands. It wasn't a letter or a phone or even a photo. It was a duffel bag, red, scuffed, tucked behind an old treadmill she hadn't used since 2018. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. Things she told me were lost. A necklace I gave her for our 5th anniversary. My grandfather's wristwatch. Our passports. Hers had a plane ticket tucked inside. One way. LAX to Lisbon. Next month. No return date. And not in her name. Not in our name. In a name I didn't recognize. A new name. Her new life. Her freedom. Neatly zipped away like I was just a phase she had already outgrown. That's when it stopped being confusing and became surgical. Cold, clean, final. I knew then what the yellow balloon meant. He had left it there. Not for me, of course. For her. A signal. A joke. Or maybe a mark, like people tagging furniture they planned to pick up. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was an abandoned lease. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I simply stood up, opened her laptop, logged in, she still used our dog's name as the password, and started moving money. Not out of revenge, out of self-respect. Everything I'd contributed, I took back. Not a dollar more. I canceled the reservation she made at that fancy rooftop restaurant next weekend. I deleted the flight she had booked under business travel in our shared calendar. And then I changed the locks. Not just the front door, the back, the garage, even the old deadbolt on the basement we never used. Every single door she used to walk through freely now stood as a reminder, this chapter is over, and I'm the one who ended it. Then I did something petty. Something small, but it felt like reclaiming oxygen after drowning for too long. I printed out the last selfie she took on my phone, the one where I'm kissing her cheek and she's looking at the camera, smirking like she already knows a secret. I scribbled across it with a red Sharpie, "Smile while it lasts." I pinned it to the bedroom mirror, right above the note I wrote the night before. The same one she'd find with trembling hands and excuses bubbling in her throat. I didn't go far that night. I couldn't. Something about watching it all unfold felt necessary. I parked down the street in my brother's truck, hat low, headlights off. I waited for the Uber to drop her off. I saw the way she stepped out, like a woman walking out of a dream, slightly drunk on her own invincibility. She adjusted her dress, checked her reflection in her phone, and climbed the steps without a care in the world. And then it hit. Her key stopped working. I saw the confusion ripple across her face in real time, like a mirror cracking behind her eyes. She pulled out her phone, probably to call me, but the number had been disconnected. I'd made sure of that, too. She knocked once, then again, then pounded. Still no answer. She didn't cry. Not yet. First came anger. The angry pacing, the quick dialing, the wild glance down the street. But I stayed hidden, because this wasn't about punishing her. It was about freeing me. The man she left behind a long time ago, the one who watered plants she never noticed, folded laundry she never thanked me for, and memorized her coffee order long after she stopped saying mine out loud. That man deserved better than to fade quietly into some footnote of her Lisbon love story. When she finally sat down on the porch and stared out into the dark, I knew the moment had arrived. The realization that she didn't just lose a house. She lost the last person who still believed she could come back home. And what she finds next will make her wish the door never opened in the first place. She stood on the porch for a long time before daring to sit. I could see her from the side mirror, stiff posture, legs crossed at the ankle, face buried in her hands. I imagined she was trying to think of a version of the story where she still came out clean. That's the thing with people like Hallie. They don't panic immediately. They try to out-narrate the moment, rewrite reality before it settles. Maybe she told herself I'd overreacted. Maybe she thought she could knock again and I'd open the door with watery eyes and a shaky apology. But the silence was too dense, too final. And eventually, she stood back up, stepped off the porch, and walked around the house. I knew she would. She always said she loved the backyard more than the front. Feels more like us, she used to whisper during our early summer nights, as if secrets and grass stains were sacred. But now, it was just stage 2 of the fallout. When she reached the gate, she probably noticed the latch was cut. Not broken, cut. Deliberately, cleanly, like everything else I'd done that day. And when she pushed it open, I imagined her first reaction wasn't even shock. It was confusion. Quiet, wordless confusion. Because the patio furniture, the set she picked out and I assembled alone one Memorial Day while she drank sangria and posted selfies, was gone. The little herb garden she said we'd plant together but never touched, dug up. The fire pit, dismantled. The hammock, slashed. And then she saw it. Dead center in the yard, where the bird bath used to be, stood a folding table draped with a white sheet. Not fancy, not decorated. Just placed. Almost ceremonial. On top sat a brown envelope and a dusty pair of wine glasses we hadn't used in years. The same glasses we toasted with the night we closed on the house. I left them there on purpose, to remind her how easily a forever could collect dust. The envelope was labeled in block letters. You should know. Inside it were screenshots. Printouts. Maps. A screenshot of her inbox. Flight confirmations. An old photo she thought she deleted, her, in a hotel lobby, smiling at someone off camera. And then, stapled at the end, the thing she would never be able to explain, the lease agreement to a downtown condo, signed in her handwriting. Dated 3 weeks ago. Not in her name. In his. And right under it, her note to him. Just a few more weeks. I'll handle everything on my end. After that, it's just you and me. Promise. You and me. Promise. I wonder how many times she rehearsed that in her head, thinking she had more time. Thinking I was too busy, too passive, too asleep. I wonder if she ever considered what it would feel like to be the one outplayed. Because that's what this was, a chess game she thought I wasn't even watching. She was too busy planning her escape to realize I'd already left emotionally. All I did that night was finish the job. I watched from the truck as she knelt down, still holding the papers, her shoulders twitching slightly like she was trying not to be seen crying, even though no one was there to watch except me and maybe the cat. I had left him behind. He liked the house. He never deserved to be dragged into this. I didn't know if she'd scream. She didn't. She sat down on the grass, in her silver party dress and heels, and stared into the dark for a long, long time. If she had looked harder, she might have noticed the security camera in the corner. Yes, I'd installed one earlier that week. I didn't do it to catch her cheating. I already knew. I did it because I wanted her to see herself in silence. What it looked like from the outside when everything you thought you controlled slipped through your hands. But it wasn't just about catching her. It was about preserving something for myself, A moment of clarity in a life that had been slowly eroding behind closed smiles and polite dinners. The first voicemail came at 2:14 a.m. I didn't hear it ring, of course. I'd blocked her number hours earlier, but she tried the old one, the landline I hadn't used in years. I'd kept it active for reasons I couldn't explain until that night. Maybe part of me wanted to hear her try. Just once. I didn't answer, but I listened. Twice. Her voice cracked halfway through the first sentence. I don't know what's going on. Are you okay? This isn't funny. I came home, and everything's gone. Curtis, where are you? Gone. Not missing. Not left. Gone. Like I was a possession she'd misplaced. The next one came 15 minutes later. No hesitation this time. No panic, just anger. Cold, sharp, rehearsed. So this is how it's going to be? After everything we've been through? After everything I did for you? She didn't even realize how loud that sentence echoed. Everything she did for me. I stared at the screen while her voice played out. I didn't cry. I didn't laugh. I just sat in a motel room 2 towns over, the kind with buzzing overhead lights and thin floral blankets, thinking how strange it was that a voice I used to fall asleep to now felt like a stranger's trying to sell me a lie. She left 4 more messages by sunrise. One pleading. One accusing. One full of long, quiet breaths like she was too exhausted to argue. And the last one? That one was different. I played it on loop. I don't know what you think you found, but I swear, it wasn't what it looks like. That sentence. The oldest excuse in the book. The dustiest lifeline in the drawer. And the irony? She was probably right. Because what I found was worse. It wasn't just about the affair. Honestly, by the time I uncovered the messages and the fake email account and the receipts she thought she deleted, the betrayal part didn't even sting the way I thought it would. It was the calculation, the timing, the strategic way she planned to vanish from our life while still living inside it, like I was just a placeholder in a home she didn't want to build anymore. The part that broke me wasn't that she cheated, it was that she trained me to be invisible first. In the days leading up to the party, I started digging deeper. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. What I found wasn't just a man. It was a pattern. He wasn't the first. Maybe not even the second. Just the latest chapter in a long book I never realized I was reading. I saw messages from 2 years ago from someone named T. Another thread from a coworker named Brent. Little overlaps, flirtations dressed up as professional banter. It made me nauseous. Not because she lied, but because I let her. Every excuse. Every vague explanation. Every moment I told myself to be understanding. I wasn't being kind. I was being erased. So no, I didn't call her back. Instead, I sent her an email. No subject line. No greeting. Just 3 sentences. You said it wasn't what it looked like. You're right. It was worse. Check the basement. I pressed send, shut the laptop, and walked out into the sunlight like I hadn't done in weeks. I went to the bakery she always hated, the one with the weird bagels and the rude barista. I smiled when the guy behind the counter scowled. It felt honest. It felt alive. Later that day, I imagined her descending the basement stairs, flicking on the old light switch, blinking at the files I had pinned to the corkboard she never noticed. All the photos, all the printed emails, even the lease in her name, scanned and enlarged. And beside it, the one thing I knew would gut her, the anniversary card I had written her 6 months ago, still sealed. I had found it in the back of the drawer, unopened. She'd never even read it. The call came from her sister. That was unexpected. Melissa and I hadn't spoken directly in years. Not since the wedding where she gave that speech, the one where she joked that Hallie never loses. At the time, I laughed politely. I thought it was just sibling humor. Now, the words felt carved into granite. Melissa sounded cautious, like someone trying to open a door that might be rigged. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't even ask if I was okay. She just said, I think you should know Hallie's been calling our mom in tears for 2 days. She says she doesn't know where you are. She says you left a lot behind. Her voice lingered on that last part, testing me. Fishing. I told her I was fine, that I needed space. And then I asked the question I already knew the answer to. Did she tell you about the condo? There was a long pause, then a quiet, no. That was all I needed to hear. Because that's what Hallie was really doing. Not grieving. Not reflecting. She was rebuilding her narrative, trying to patch the holes in the version of the story she still wanted to sell. The one where I was overreacting, where I had misunderstood, where maybe we were both to blame. She wasn't chasing me out of guilt. She was chasing me out of risk management. She thought I'd do what I always did, that I'd crumble under the guilt of making her cry, that I'd text something sheepish, that I'd give her a window to step through, right back into the role of misunderstood wife. She didn't realize the man she'd trained to bend had finally broken, not in rage, not in violence, but in resolve. That night, she sent a friend to the house. Not a close one. A mutual we knew from an old barbecue circuit, someone harmless, unthreatening, someone who could still claim neutrality. I watched him from the camera feed I still had access to. He approached the porch nervously, hands in his hoodie, knocked once, and opened the mailbox. Hallie had clearly sent him to retrieve something. Maybe she thought I'd left another note. Maybe she was hoping I'd left something else. But I hadn't. The mailbox was empty, except for a flash drive taped to the underside of the lid. She didn't know about that. Not yet. The man took it, looked around, left. 20 minutes later, I got the text. Not from her, from an unknown number. Just one sentence. "We need to talk. Please." I didn't reply, but I imagined what was on that drive playing in her apartment that evening. The screen recording of her deleted messages. The financial trail. The 2 hotel bookings under aliases. The Ring camera footage of her and Brent, her co-worker, laughing on our porch while I was away at my aunt's funeral. The timestamp said 11:02 p.m. That night, she told me she had a migraine and went to bed early. There's something about watching the past, pixel by pixel, after the lie has expired. It's like rewatching a movie you loved as a kid and suddenly realizing how much of it was flawed. Only this time, it wasn't a film. It was my life. The version I believed in didn't exist. I wasn't just betrayed, I was edited out. And now that I was no longer playing the role she wrote for me, she was panicking. I left a message on our shared cloud folder the next day. Not a message, exactly, just a single upload. A scanned copy of the signed quitclaim deed. My name officially off the house. Filed. Certified. I let her keep it. Not out of kindness. Not out of guilt. Because it was never mine to begin with. Not the way she lived in it. Not the way she planned her escape from within it. She could have the walls. The floors. The plumbing. What she didn't get to keep was me. And she knew it. I received one final message later that week, from a different email. A burner. All lowercase. No punctuation. If we could just talk without all the noise, maybe we could fix this. There's always that word. Fix. As if this was a leaky faucet. As if this was a misunderstanding. As if a reset button was ever an option. I stared at her final message for a long time. There was something eerie about how she wrote it. No punctuation, no capital letters, just desperation stripped of polish. If we could just talk without all the noise, maybe we could fix this. As if the noise hadn't been silence. As if the silence hadn't been a survival tactic. As if I hadn't spent the last 2 years walking around our home like a ghost who forgot he was dead. The old me would have replied within minutes, typing and deleting, sweating over every word to strike the right balance between vulnerability and calm. But this time, my fingers didn't even twitch. Because this time, I had nothing left to explain. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something she wouldn't expect. I drove back to the house, not to see her, not to confront her, but for one last thing I hadn't collected. The piano. The one I bought off Craigslist during our 2nd year of marriage. She never played it. I barely touched it either, but it was the only thing I brought into that house that felt completely mine. It sat in the guest room, covered in dust, keys slightly out of tune, but somehow more alive than our last 3 anniversaries combined. The driveway was empty. Good. I still had a key to the back entrance. She hadn't figured out that one yet. I stepped inside and felt like I'd entered a museum of our collapse. The lights were off. A wine glass was still on the counter. The same scent she used to spray before guests arrived hung faintly in the air, like she was trying to convince even herself the place wasn't haunted. I didn't linger. I grabbed the piano bench, lifted the lid, and found something inside I hadn't expected, a folded letter. My handwriting. I froze. It was the anniversary letter I thought she'd never opened, the one I'd left sealed in the drawer. But this copy was creased, bent, the seal broken. And on the back, written in her handwriting, were 4 words. I read it late. That stopped me cold. I sat on the edge of the bench, letter in one hand, heart in the other, and wondered, did she mean it? Did she find it after I left? Did she read it when the house echoed and the lies unraveled? Or did she read it before the party, knowing exactly what she was about to do? Either way, the words didn't change. They only deepened the cut. The letter wasn't dramatic. It was soft, honest. I had written about how I missed her voice in the mornings, how I still noticed the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was lying, how I sometimes waited for her to roll over in bed and whisper anything, even good night, just to feel like I still existed in her world. I'd signed it. If you ever need to find me, I'll still be here, unless you leave first. I guess we both did. I took the letter, not to keep, to bury. When I left the house with the piano keys jangling in my hand, I drove to our old hiking trail, the one we never finished because she twisted her ankle and I carried her half a mile back to the car. I found a quiet place off the path, dug a hole in the soft dirt with my bare hands, and placed the letter inside. Then I took the flash drive, the original one, and buried it beside it. Some truths don't need to be erased. They just need to be buried deep enough that you stop tripping over them. I didn't leave anything for her this time. No note, no voicemail, no clue. She would keep trying, I knew that. Trying to reach me, trying to backpedal into a version of our life where she was still the good guy who made a mistake instead of the architect of an escape plan. But what she didn't know was that the final lock wasn't the one on the door. It was the one on my attention. Once that's gone, the rest follows. Quietly, cleanly, permanently. And yet, the story wasn't over. Because a week later, I got a letter. Not from her. From him. It came in a pale blue envelope with no return address. Handwritten, my name spelled wrong. Curtis, with 2 S's. Like someone was trying to be careful, but didn't know me well enough to get it right. It wasn't delivered through the mailbox. It was slipped under the door of the studio apartment I'd rented in the next town over. That meant someone followed me. Or worse, someone knew exactly where I went when I disappeared. I stared at the envelope for almost an hour. Not because I didn't know who sent it. I did. The handwriting wasn't hers. It was his. The man behind the yellow balloon. The blurred figure in the hotel lobby photos. The voice in the voicemail she tried to delete from our shared iCloud account. I never said his name aloud. Not to her. Not to anyone. It was always just him. The shadow. The placeholder. The next chapter she never asked permission to turn to. I finally opened it when the streetlights came on. Inside was one sheet of paper. No apology. No threats. Just a calm, surgical message written in ballpoint pen, like someone explaining a canceled reservation. It read, "She told me you were separating. I didn't ask too many questions. We weren't supposed to matter. But she changed the rules. And by the time I realized it, she was already talking about furniture. About Lisbon. About starting over. I ended it. 2 days ago. Thought you should know." There was no signature. No name. Just that. I read it 3 times, each time slower than the last, like there was going to be a line at the end that suddenly made it all okay. But there wasn't. Just that sterile confession and the last sentence. Thought you should know. As if that erased the months I spent shrinking into silence. As if that undid the hotel receipts, the emails, the moment she told me to get some rest while she texted him from the shower. At first, I didn't know what to feel. It wasn't relief. Not even anger. Just confusion. Because part of me had imagined him as some cartoon villain. Sleazy. Calculated. Cold. But this sounded like someone who got used. The same way I had. And suddenly, I realized we weren't enemies. We were chapters. Overlapping. Unaware. Each of us convinced we were her now, while she edited the story around us in real time. I wasn't the abandoned husband. He wasn't the affair partner. We were both extras in a script she kept rewriting depending on who was in the room. I wanted to scream. I wanted to track him down and ask him why he didn't dig deeper, why he believed her, why he didn't question the timeline. But I couldn't, because I had done the same thing. I didn't question when she started working late. I didn't challenge the canceled vacations. I didn't ask why she cried during our anniversary dinner, but insisted it was just stress. We had both signed a contract with someone who never intended to honor the terms. I folded the letter and burned it in the sink. It didn't feel noble. It didn't feel cinematic. It just felt necessary. Like putting a diseased limb to flame so it wouldn't spread. And for a moment, I thought that was it. That the story had finally, truly ended. The ashes swirled down the drain like something I didn't want to carry anymore. But as I wiped the counter, something caught my eye. The back of the envelope. There was a faint watermark pressed into the paper, not printed, not inked. Indented. I held it under the lamp. It was an address. Handwritten with pressure, as if he'd written a second letter beneath this one, and the pen carved it into the next envelope by mistake. And that's when I realized he didn't send just one letter. There was another one. Not to me. To her. I found the other letter 3 days later. Not by chance, I went looking for it. The watermark on the back of the envelope had led me to a private mailbox suite on the edge of town. I walked in pretending to be lost. The clerk barely looked up. I gave the name she once used on airline bookings. She used it again, it turned out. Same name. Same box. Number 312. I didn't open it. I couldn't. That letter wasn't meant for me. It was his response to her silence. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I didn't want to see what he said to her that he couldn't say to me. But I did stand there for a long time, just holding it in my hand. I imagined the words inside. The confusion. The betrayal. Maybe even regret. Maybe he apologized. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter anymore. I left the letter there. I slid it gently back into the box and walked out without looking over my shoulder. I had no interest in seeing how she would react. I'd spent years studying her expressions, trying to decode the smallest shifts in tone or temperature. I was done watching people learn things they should have known all along. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't spiral. I made pasta and overcooked it. I sat on the couch with a thrift store blanket. I looked at the ceiling and realized, for the first time in months, that I wasn't waiting for the next blow, the next message, the next drop of the mask. The silence was no longer tense. It was soft, clean, peaceful. A week later, I got a postcard. Not a text. Not a call. A real postcard, no return address, just one sentence scrawled in ink that looked rushed and cracked. You were right. About everything. I'm sorry. That was it. No explanation. No request. Just a sentence that arrived too late for her, but right on time for me. I didn't cry. I smiled. A small, tired smile. Not because I wanted her pain, but because I finally understood that not all endings have to be clean to be complete. I framed that postcard, not out of spite, but as a reminder that closure doesn't always come in grand gestures or neat conversations. Sometimes, it's just a quiet truth, mailed late, received calmly, placed beside a life you've already started to rebuild. Now I wake up early. Not because I have to, but because I want to. I go on walks without checking my phone. I make coffee exactly the way I like it, strong, bitter, honest. And sometimes, when the wind is quiet and the world hasn't begun buzzing yet, I sit on the porch of my new place and breathe like I have all the time in the world. Because now, I do. This was never a story about revenge. It wasn't even about betrayal. It was about becoming the kind of person who stops begging for someone to come home and starts building a life where you already are. And in that life, I'm not waiting anymore. I'm living. And for the first time in a long time, I'm free.